This is CBC Vancouver News.
When people are taking the time to go online and pony up money, it really does tell us where their support is lying.
Follow the money. As a provincial election looms, which parties are collecting the most political donations? Plus,
if you're not compliant with them, they'll get violent with you, they'll drag you out of your tent.
Crab Park residents say rangers are cracking down hard on campers under the summer heat. And
I think it's crazy. I mean, this is inconvenience.
It's pretty evident that they're not investing in regular upkeep.
Too hot to shop? Several Hudsons Bay stores across BC are closed. Is it more than just the heat? Hello, I'm Michelle Ghoussoub. Thanks for joining us. With just over 3 months before the provincial elections, BC's major political parties are trying to fill their war chests with donations from you. While some parties are flush with cash, others are struggling. As Katie DeRosa reports, the latest political donations show where some voters' loyalties might lie.
Political polls can be an imperfect science when predicting election outcomes, but money, it talks.
But when people are taking the time to go online and pony up money, it really does tell us where their support is lying.
That's why the latest fundraising figures for the 4 major BC political parties speak volumes when it comes to voter intention. The governing BC NDP is way out in front, with $2.2 million raised just in the last 3 months. However, the BC Conservatives are surging.
Donations are a really tangible example of how our support has been increasing, and we're going to need a huge war chest to go up against the NDP machines.
The party has raised $1.1 million in that same period, almost a 3-fold increase from the first quarter of this year. Conservative leader John Rustad has even caught the attention of the former leader of the BC Greens.
My prediction is that the BC Conservatives will win. When I know that people who voted for me, and I know that people who have historically voted NDP, are seriously considering voting BC Conservative in this NDP town, that tells me something.
Premier David Eby says he's confident the NDP's record will stand up come Election Day.
And hopefully, we'll be able to show people the costs of bringing back any variety of the former BC Liberals that are currently running under different names under the Witness Protection Program. And we'll see what they have to say on Election Day.
The official opposition, BC United, have taken a hit in donations, bringing in $627,000 in the last 3 months. Meanwhile, the BC Greens fundraising numbers have remained steady, with $334,000 brought in. Not only have the BC Conservatives eclipsed BC United in fundraising, they've also poached some of their candidates. Former BC United MLAs Eleanor Sturco and Lorne Dirksen crossed the floor to join the Conservatives, and Chris Moore jumped ship last month to run under the Conservative banner in Powell River Sunshine Coast. Katie DeRosa, CBC News, Victoria.
After the City of Surrey's long-winded policing saga, the province and the city have reached an agreement on the Surrey police transition.
Our agreement includes funding of up to $250 million over 10 years. This includes the current $150 million commitment and a financial guarantee to pay up to $20 million per year for the difference between the salary costs of the Surrey Police Service and the costs that would have been paid for RCMP salaries.
Farnworth added that the province's assistance will ensure increased costs aren't offloaded onto Surrey taxpayers. He also pointed out the City of Surrey asked to negotiate with the province after it lost a court battle over the transition. The heads-on crash has killed a family of 3 in Agassiz, including a child. It happened early Tuesday morning along Lougheed Highway. Police say a car and a tractor-trailer collided. 2 adults in the car died at the scene. An infant in the car with them was airlifted to hospital but died a few hours later. The driver of the tractor-trailer was not hurt. It's not yet clear what caused the crash, but investigators say they don't believe alcohol or drugs were involved. The crash closed the highway for most of Sunday but has since reopened. Meanwhile, 3 passengers are dead after a single vehicle crash just north of Invermere. Police say it happened last night when a car went off the road and crashed down an embankment. The 3 victims died at the scene. The driver was taken to hospital with serious but non-life-threatening injuries. RCMP say speed and intoxication are believed to have played a role. A drive-by shooting caused damage, but no injuries at a business in Yaletown this morning. Vancouver police say it happened just after 8 a.m. A spokesperson for Isabel's Cocktail Bar on Hamilton Street confirms it was hit by gunfire. They say they only heard about the shooting hours later and are still waiting for police to share more details. A motive is not yet clear. More than 100 affordable homes are ready for Indigenous people to move into in Surrey. It's part of a phase 2 of the Sokia development.
We want the families who live here to think less about how they are going to make rent, but more about enjoying life in their community. Housing is also an important marker on the path to reconciliation with Indigenous people.
Combined with 73 homes finished in Phase 1 in 2019, Sokia now has 177 homes. The project is part of a $19 billion housing investment by the province. Well, Vancouver City Council has approved a plan to remove view protections from a number of locations in the city. The so-called view cones were protected by guidelines originally introduced 35 years ago. They largely feature vistas of the North Shore Mountains, but according to a city staff report, changes to the majority of them could allow 10 to 20 million square meters of new development at a time when Vancouver is experiencing a housing affordability crisis. The majority of councillors supported the staff recommendations. 3 councillors voted against changing protections for a few locations, including Cambie and Granville Streets and Cambie Bridge. Decorated Second World War veteran and Oak Bay fundraising legend John Hillman has died.
More thanks than I really deserve.
The 105-year-old raised more than $400,000 for the Save the Children charity through his walkathons. For the past 5 years, on his birthday, Hillman would walk a lap for every year of his life outside his former retirement home. Staff confirm he died in his sleep on Sunday.
That kind of dedication to public good, I certainly see it in other aspects of our community. I think he was really an exemplary model of what that looks like. Just how do I use my life to make the world a better place? That's hard to replace.
Hillman joined the Royal Air Force in 1937. He served as a radio operator in the Second World War and helped drop supplies to allies. Carlton House says it plans to continue Hillman's legacy by opening his fundraising page every year on his birthday. About 20 heat warnings are still in effect for some parts of BC, and finding relief from that heat can be tough at the best of times. If you have no shelter or live outdoors, it's that much more difficult to keep comfortable. As Bell Prix reports, advocates for people in Vancouver's Crab Park encampment claim park rangers have become increasingly heavy-handed amid the heat wave.
It's an empty patch where there once was an anticipated harvest.
There were tomato plants this high. They had flowers on them, so they're about to bloom into tomatoes, like probably today or tomorrow. And there is some cucumber or squash as well.
Advocates blame the disappearing garden on ongoing Vancouver Park Board cleanup efforts.
The rangers have been really brutal and just terrorizing the encampment every day.
The Crab Park encampment gets regular visits from park rangers accompanied by Vancouver police officers.
Every single day they come in here and take things that people need for survival. So things like the tarps, the canopies, the coolers for ice and water during this heat wave where people are just trying to make things a little bit more survivable, are being seized by the rangers.
There are currently 9 tents in a designated area of the park.
They come in every morning and a group of them stay here for about an hour and a half, and they take anything that's not nailed down. It's really abrasive, and like if you're not compliant with them, they'll get violent with you. They'll drag you out of your tent.
The Park Board and the City have maintained their shared goal is to support those who shelter outdoors to come inside. In a statement to CBC, the Vancouver Park Board says the coolers were part of excessive belongings being kept outside of a tent site, which is in contravention of the park's bylaw and general manager's guidelines for the designated area. The occupant of the tent, it says, did not respond when rangers reached out to discuss prioritizing which items they wanted to keep in their tent.
The rangers are really making things difficult for the heat, for homeless people. They're not going to solve homelessness by getting rid of us.
The park board says the coolers have been stored. If the owner wants them back, they can be returned. Belle Puri, CBC News, Vancouver.
If you've gone shopping recently, you may have noticed many Hudsons Bay stores in BC unexpectedly closed this week. The company says the heat wave is putting a strain on air conditioning systems. But as John Hernandez reports, retail analysts believe it's a symptom of a much bigger problem facing the storied Canadian retailer.
Customer after customer locked out.
Well, something's wrong with this place.
Vancouver's Hudsons Bay store closed for days. The company issued no notice of the closure online or on its phone lines, frustrating customers like Janice Fairley.
It's the second time I've come all the way downtown, and the first time some guy came to the door and just posted a sign just as everyone was waiting here.
That sign claims scheduled system maintenance. But after more stores closed in places like West Vancouver, Victoria, Surrey, and even Prince George, the company told CBC News the heat wave has strained air conditioning systems at many of its locations.
I was in a little while ago, and they shut down. I think I was the last non-employee.
This retail analyst we reached in Penticton says the closures are a symptom of a bigger trend.
It's pretty evident that they're not investing in regular upkeep and keeping the stores fresh. That is pretty clear, not just now, but for maybe the last couple of years.
Many customers have taken note of a steadily declining shopping experience.
The other time I went here, the escalator wasn't working, so I don't know what's happening to Hudsons Bay. It's inconvenience for the shoppers.
The staff is kind of, up in arms. There's nothing they can do.
Some retail analysts say the historic Canadian company's American owners are less interested in stores and more interested in the land they sit on. The downtown Vancouver site is slated for a massive redevelopment.
Hudsons Bay, or HBC, is really more of a real estate company with a side order of retail.
This analyst says the owners could sell off more sites and leases in the future.
They may sell it, they may keep it. I personally think that the Bay probably needs to shrink considerably, that you don't need these big department stores. They could probably get away with half the space, a third of the space they have now.
An uncertain future for a once mighty Canadian company. John Hernandez, CBC News, Vancouver.
The Cook's Ferry Indian Band near Spence's Bridge is demanding accountability from railway companies. They claim they were responsible for several fires on band land over the past 3 months. As Jennifer Norwell reports, the band chief is concerned there could be a disaster if the companies don't provide proper fire suppression efforts.
The side of the Highway 1, just about a kilometre outside of Spence's Bridge. This is just outside of where the Cook's Ferry Indian Band has its communities. And they say in the last 70 days, there's been 5 fires that have been caused, they believe, from rail trains coming through the area, sparking off a fire. Behind me, there's a fire that was started on July 1st. Now it's about 40 degrees. That day, it was about 15 degrees cooler. And they say if it had been temperatures like this, there's a real risk that that fire could have caught and it could have traveled huge distances around the community, perhaps causing a substantive fire.
It's a tumultuous time that really takes the life out of a person. You can't move on.
I don't think that this is just an Hudsons Ferry issue or a Lytton issue. This is a Canada issue. We hear over and over that any community, municipality that's adjacent to a rail line has had issues with their relationship with the rail line and how the rail lines respond to those incidences.
And so what they're asking for is that the rail lines, CP and CN, along with the federal government, do more to help support community. This isn't just items, it's not just money, it's all of it. Because they feel that at this point in a small community, it's not a matter of whether or not there's going to be a rail-caused fire, it's when it happens and what kind of resources are going to be happening and in place when that fire happens.
They follow their act. There's federal acts in the transportation that they are responsible for following and take responsibility for the damage that is caused and originating on their rail line.
Jennifer Norwell, CBC News, Spence's Bridge.
As it continues to stare at sagging poll numbers, there are still questions whether it's time for the federal Liberals to have a new leader. On CBC Radio's The Early Edition, host Stephen Quinn asked a cabinet minister if Prime Minister Justin Trudeau is a liability or an asset. Here's how François-Philippe Champagne responded.
Leaving the personalities apart, in which society do you want to live in? What is dear to you? How would you, to whom would you give the key of the house? That's really what I say to folks. And when I'm in the street, people said, I'd rather give you the keys.
Liability or asset?
I would say I'm always focusing on making sure that we do what's right for Canadians, and they'll make the final choice. That's how democracy works.
You are not saying that the Prime Minister, that Justin Trudeau, is an asset going into the next election.
He's the leader. He's been providing leadership, and that's what Canadians want to see.
You can hear that full interview on the CBC Listen app. Well, snakes on a plane or eels on a tarmac? It was a very real situation at Vancouver International Airport today when dozens of eels spilled out of a container box. As Michelle Morton reports, they gave fellow flyers a bit of a scare.
You've heard of the movie Snakes on a Plane, but what about this plot twist? Eels. A video being shared on social media shows a shipment spilling live eels onto Vancouver International Airport's tarmac. In a post on the platform X, formerly known as Twitter, you can see dozens of eels slithering on the ground near some workers as more fish slip down the loading ramp from a white container one by one. The airport says in a statement the incident happened this past Sunday involving an Air Canada flight from Toronto. The airline says Air Canada Cargo was handling a shipment of live eels when the container accidentally spilled during unloading, but the eels were collected and repackaged. Air Canada says it's also in contact with the customer. While it's not clear who captured the footage at this point, the video has been shared by multiple accounts online and has garnered thousands of views. CBC has reached out to the Canadian Food Inspection Agency for comment, but has not heard back by deadline. Michelle Morton, CBC News, Vancouver.
Still to come, it's not the Tour de France, but racers at the annual Gast Grand Prix are giving it all to win. Hundreds of cyclists hit the streets of downtown Vancouver. Stay tuned. Welcome back. If you were in downtown Vancouver this evening, you might have noticed a lot more cyclists on the streets, along with some major road closures. That's because the Gastown Grand Prix was on. Cyclists braved the cobblestone streets, racing to win. Our Caroline Chan was there.
The weather definitely cooperating for the Gastown Grand Prix. Nice and dry for the cyclists who are doing laps on the cobblestone roads in this historic neighborhood. The race is in its 51st year and is one of the largest criterium cycling events in North America. In the women's pro race, they'll do 30 laps around the circuit, which runs along West Cordova, Columbia, Powell, and Water Street. For the men's pro race, that will be 42 laps, which is about 60 kilometers. The event draws cyclists from across the country and around the world. Organizers say about 130 cyclists from 13 countries were participating in Wednesday's races. The race also has one of the largest prize purses in professional cycling. Caroline Chan, CBC News, Vancouver.
Here's a shot of Mount Baker from earlier tonight at sunset. Darius will have your full forecast next.
Hi, I'm Amy Bell, and here's what's in your CBC Vancouver inbox. CBC returns as a media partner of the Surrey Fusion Festival, July 20th to the 21st. The festival features over 50 cultural pavilions that will incorporate the theme of landmarks of the world into their displays. For more information, visit surreyfusionfestival.ca. And never miss a special programming series, event, or contest. Subscribe to CBC Vancouver's e-newsletter and keep connected with us.
The weather update is brought to you by Direct Buy Furnace. To cool and clean the air in your home, call Direct Buy Furnace. Installing Train, the most reliable heating and cooling brand.
And our Darius Madavi joins us now for a look at the forecast ahead. Darius, some relief here on the south coast, but some concern in the north in terms of wind.
Yes, that's right. So our heat warnings have dropped here on the south coast and up in the northeast as well, but now they're getting a new danger, which is those winds and storms that are going to be rolling through. And with that high fire danger that we have across the province, any lightning that comes can mean new fire starts. And that's what the BC Wildfire Service is saying that they're worried about. They're expecting many new fire starts overnight today and overnight tonight and into tomorrow because that storm is going to be rolling through. Now, this ridge of high pressure is still going to have most of its influence in the south, so temperature is still staying high, still staying very dry, but it's retreating enough that we're going to have the opportunity for those convective storms to pop up again, and that is what we saw last night. We'll take a look at that in a minute. But meanwhile, in the north, we're going to see lots of precipitation come in some areas, which is very good news. Most of that precipitation came in the last few hours, but there is a little bit more on the way. With that, though, does come those very high winds gusting 70, 80 kilometers per hour, and the risk of some new fire starts because of that lightning activity that's coming as well. So you can see there those high winds that are going to be blowing through parts of the northeast. Again, these are going to be gusting very high, and so that means both more active fires, harder to fight fires, and the possibility of new fire starts if they jump to new areas. So something that we're going to be keeping an eye out on. And you know how I mentioned that lightning activity is a big concern right now? We'll just take a look. This is just last night down in parts of the of the Peace, or sorry, not in the Peace, of the Caribou region, and you can see just northeast of Williams Lake, this storm system that just rolled through for about 4 or 5 hours, just popped up one small cell, but many, many lightning strikes, and this is what we saw. All these new fire starts, most of which are still out of control, according to the BC Wildfire Service, as a result of that system rolling through this cluster right here. Pretty much all new fires that just came from that those few lightning strikes. So something that we're going to keep an eye on for sure is that lightning activity, and as well, where there's fire, there's smoke, of course, so lots of smoke risk as well in the northern parts of the province, as well as parts of the southeast. Now, in terms of those highs, they are going to start to fall a little bit in some places, but generally the south still staying quite hot, even if inland, if you're inland on the lower mainland, still quite hot, even though not quite what we're seeing in the interior. In terms of conditions across the province, still mostly sunny, but we do start to see some lightning risk in some parts of the province. That's another thing we'll be keeping an eye out for. And here in Metro Vancouver, still, as always, lots of sunshine. Not as always, but as always, now it seems, lots of sunshine. Maybe a little bit of cloud towards the end of this week, but we're still hot.
And quite something to see all those new fire starts in that cluster.
Yes, definitely.
Thanks, Darius.
Thank you.
And that is your late news for Wednesday. Thank you so much for joining us tonight. For news anytime, including the latest on all the wildfires in this province, visit our website. That's cbc.ca/BC. Your next local news is on the early edition. That's on CBC Radio 1 and starts tomorrow morning at 5:30. Good night.